Meanwhile, in the Show Me State, lawmakers returned to the state capitol to redraw the state's congressional map in a special session. It was shared by the governor on Friday, and it would add one more Republican seat in D.C. Redistricting has been happening in several states in recent years. Starting in Texas, Democrats there delayed a vote on their new map by leaving the state, something Missouri Democrats cannot do. That's because Republicans have a supermajority, so they can vote without Democrats present.
We are now in touch with Ohio and Indiana, who are facing similar redistricting fights. We're talking with minority leaders in those states to discuss what it is that we can do to make sure that folks across the country understand where the fight is.
It should have been done 2 years ago by the Missouri legislature, so I think the Missouri legislature dropped the ball a couple of years ago.
Missouri's special session starts on Wednesday.